There could be a debate about the first rule of handicapping and betting in college football, but I think rule number one this year in 2020 is just basically finding the games that are actually being played. We got Steve Merrill on the line from prosportsinfo.com. Please join him right there. Again, it's prosportsinfo.com. You'll see it on the banner in just a second. Steve, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. And as we talk here Friday afternoon, 15 games have been canceled for this Saturday, and it's increasing by the moment. But I think our big three that we're going to cover here, I think we're pretty good shape to get those in. I don't look at too much of a conspiracy angle in college football, but I think maybe a little more leeway not to cancel these big-time, primetime TV games.
So, folks, we go with 3 games each week with Steve's betting edge, and then he provides a pick of the week over on Patreon, where I went 16-4 against the spread this past weekend. All right. We've got a noon game in Blacksburg where Virginia Tech's coming off a very disappointing loss, a very crazy finish to a game against Liberty as a 16 or 17-point favorite, losing at the gun by a field goal. Virginia Tech hosting Miami. The Canes off to a good start at 6-1, but the Hokies a home 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, Mark, you talk about the keys to handicapping. One key that I always say is that over-unders, the cash is just as green when those win as the side selection. And as you mentioned, the point spread here is 2.5. I don't see a lot of value with either team on the side, but I do think there's some value with the over-under in this game, which is currently 68. Now, it opened 64, quickly went up to 67.5, and now 68 this week. But my power ratings show this game to be in the 70s, so I still think there's a little wiggle room to get there. And as you mentioned, Virginia Tech in a really difficult spot here, a 38-35 shootout loss to Liberty as a 17-point favorite last week. I've always said I think hangovers and letdowns happen a bit more after tough losses than big wins, and especially that's on the defensive side. And both of these teams are quick strike offensive teams that are more than capable of putting points up. Virginia Tech averaging over 37 points a game, 7 yards per play this year. Problem is they're giving up 31.5 points a game, over 6.5 yards per play. So that Miami offense that averages over 34 points a game, over 6 yards per play, should have plenty of success. I'll look for a back-and-forth shootout in this one with that 2.5-point spread range. As you mentioned, it should be a competitive game, and I think they will get a lot of points here. I think this game goes over 68. I think that's the best way to play this early kickoff on ESPN Saturday.
You hit, Steve, on one of those buzzwords that people are looking for, letdown. And if there could be a bit letdown, we could be looking at a couple different angles here with Boston College hosting Notre Dame. So, of course, the Irish coming off the huge, enormous win over number 1 Clemson. Boston College involved a couple weeks ago in a possible letdown when they went to Clemson. Clemson looking ahead to Notre Dame in a possible trap game in which Boston College almost pulled off the upset. So a couple weeks later, we've got Notre Dame going to BC and the Irish an 11.5-point pick by Vegas.
Yeah, it's funny. When I just said that letdowns happen after tough losses more than big wins, I'm like, boy, I'm contradicting myself because this very next game we're going to talk about, I'm going to say the exact opposite thing. But, letdowns can obviously happen after big wins as well. And I think one of the most overused words recently in the last few years has been epic. I'm not a big fan of the word epic, but that was an epic game last week. I mean, that was an instant classic, whatever you want to call it. 47-40, double overtime shootout. It's hard to imagine Notre Dame is going to be fully focused after winning not only a huge game like that as a home dog, but now traveling and laying almost 2 touchdowns. That's what makes this a dangerous spot. If they're playing Ohio State or Alabama this week, I wouldn't worry about the letdown as much. It's more the fact that they're taking a step down in class after a big win that concerns you. And then on top of that, we're not talking about Notre Dame necessarily losing this game. We're just talking about Boston College being able to stay within 2 touchdowns. Now, this line did open 13. It went quickly to 13.5 earlier this week, but as of Friday afternoon, it's now 11.5. So the money is starting to come in on Boston College. I agree with that move. I actually make the power rating 12 in this game. So at 13.5, there was some line value. Maybe there's no more line value now at 11.5, but I think the situational setup still favors Boston College. Also like the fact, Mark, that they're a good defensive team. They allowed just 24.5 points a game, just 5.5 yards per play. So I think that can keep them in this game. Now, my concern is they're not a great offensive team. And, when you're looking for that backdoor cover potential, you always want teams that can move the ball offensively. But I think the fact that BC is a good defensive team will keep this one close. And then you factor in a little bit of a letdown, which is just human nature here in this spot from Notre Dame. Boston College plus the points would be the way to play it.
The Big Ten is in prime time at the Big House with Michigan hosting Wisconsin. The Wolverines in tough shape after losing a couple of games in which they were a favorite against Indiana and 3 touchdowns against Michigan State. taking on the Wisconsin Badgers. Just happy to be on the field for the first time in 3 weeks after the big opening win against Illinois, 45-7. Graham Mertz and company, a 4.5-point favorite on the road at Michigan.
Yeah, another one of those handicapping adages I always talk about is that we don't like uncertainty. And this is a textbook example with Wisconsin, just the uncertainty of which team is going to be available here. I mean, as you said, they haven't played for each of the past 2 weeks since that opening win due to COVID issues. We still don't have 100% accuracy on which players are going to be in the lineup this weekend. Now, I did use Wisconsin as a strong best bet for my clients 3 weeks ago on that Friday night opener against Illinois, 45-7. So I do like this Badger team, and my power ratings like them in this spot as well. All things equal, all the players in the lineup, my power ratings favor Wisconsin by 7 points at Michigan in this game. So the opening number of 2.5 was too low. It quickly got bet up to 4.5 where it is now. So yes, there is still value with Wisconsin at minus 4.5. The problem is the setup, the uncertainty of who's playing, and also Michigan's just a really ugly team right now. They had that big win against Minnesota to start the season. We find out that Minnesota can't stop anyone this year. The Golden Gophers are giving up over 8 yards per play after 3 games this year. And then Michigan loses outright to both Michigan State and Indiana as a favorite in both of those games. They scored 49 against Minnesota. They've only scored 45 combined in those last 2 losses. So that is a concern here. I'm not in a hurry to get behind Michigan, and there is line value once again with Wisconsin. I'm just not sure I can pull the trigger with all that uncertainty with the COVID issues and the time off.
Join Steve on prosportsinfo.com. That's prosportsinfo.com. He's got all your needs in college football and also NFL covered. Join us on Patreon. I've got my predictions there, 16-4 against the spread last weekend. We also have watch parties, exclusive live streams, also have an insider look. And, oh, yeah, Steve's pick of the week coming up on Patreon, so please join us there.